Every genre players know and love today exists because one game came along and rewrote the rules. Not the first game in the genre necessarily, but the one that defined it, the one that made every developer after it say, "That's the blueprint." From platformers to open-world RPGs, these are the 10 video games that didn't just shape their genres, they created them. And some of these connections might be surprising.
Number 10. Super Mario Bros. NES.
Before this, games were about high scores. Get points, beat your friend's record, repeat. Then this came along in 1985 and changed everything. A story with a beginning and an end, a world that scrolled sideways and kept going, power-ups that transformed the way gameplay felt mid-level, and a difficulty curve so perfectly tuned that it taught players how to play without ever needing a tutorial. Every 2D platformer that followed, Kirby, Sonic, Mega Man, Donkey Kong Country, all of them trace their DNA straight back to this one game. It didn't just define a genre, it defined what a video game could be. Number 9. Super Mario 64, N64. Lightning struck twice. When the Nintendo 64 launched, it came with a game that did for 3D platforming what its predecessor did for 2D. The analog stick implementation was revolutionary, giving players full 360-degree control over movement in a way that felt intuitive from the very first second. The semi-open levels, the collectathon structure, the acrobatic moveset, all of it became the template for every 3D platformer that followed. Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro, Jak and Daxter, Hat in Time, they all owe their existence to this game. Nintendo may have arrived late to the 3D console wars, but it set the standard on day one. Number 8. Street Fighter II: The World Warrior, Arcade. The original Street Fighter was fine. It existed, nobody really cared. Then the sequel dropped in 1991 and single-handedly created the competitive fighting game scene that still thrives today. Roster of unique characters with distinct playstyles, colorful graphics that popped off the screen, and a groundbreaking combo system paired with a 6-button layout that made combat feel both accessible and deep. Arcades were packed, living rooms turned into battlegrounds, and every fighting game that came after, Fatal Fury, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, all of them were born because this game proved the genre could dominate. Number 7. Doom PC. Wolfenstein 3D came first, sure, but this is the one that made the entire world pay attention. Released in 1993 during the dawn of 3D graphics, it delivered a first-person experience that felt groundbreaking in every way. The speed, the violence, the hellish aesthetic dripping with 90s attitude. The gameplay was simple, but has aged remarkably well, and its influence is staggering. Half-Life, Duke Nukem 3D, Quake, Ultra Kill, the entire FPS genre as it exists today can be traced back to this game. It wasn't just popular, it was absolutely everywhere, and it turned the first-person shooter into the dominant force it remains to this day. Number 6. Resident Evil, PS1. Horror games existed before this. Alone in the Dark is usually credited as the grandfather of modern survival horror, but the genre wouldn't be what it is today without this 1996 classic. The fixed camera angles, the claustrophobic atmosphere, the limited resources forcing players to think before they shoot. Every single element was meticulously crafted to make players feel vulnerable, and it worked. Silent Hill, Eternal Darkness, Siren, they all borrowed heavily from the template established here. This game didn't just launch one of gaming's most successful franchises, it triggered an entire survival horror renaissance that defined the late 90s and early 2000s. Number 5. Final Fantasy VII, PS1. Almost every classic Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest entry could claim a spot on a list like this, but this is the one that single-handedly popularized turn-based RPGs in the West while making the jump to 3D feel seamless. The blend of sci-fi and fantasy, the cast of characters with genuinely tragic backstories, and a story ambitious enough to resonate with millions around the world. The combat system was both accessible and intricate, pulling in players who'd never touched an RPG before and making them fall in love with the genre. The Legend of Dragoon, Chrono Cross, Persona, Xenoblade Chronicles, none of them exist in their current form without this game paving the way. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, N64. The franchise had already defined action-adventure in 2D, The original and The Link to the Past set the standard, but this took that formula and translated it into 3D so perfectly that it felt like the genre had been waiting for this game to arrive. The semi-open map delivered a sense of adventure players had never experienced before. The Z-targeting system made 3D combat feel intuitive and dynamic for the first time. It felt like one of the very first open-world games ever made. Kingdom Hearts, Dark Souls, Okami, The Witcher, everything draws a direct line back to this as one of the most important video games ever created. Number 3. Devil May Cry, PS2. Here's a wild piece of trivia. This game only exists because Resident Evil 4's development went sideways. What started as a Resident Evil title mutated into something completely different, and in doing so, accidentally created an entire genre. Fast-paced combat built around extensive combo chains, dripping with style and personality. Games with similar action existed before, but none of them focused on the kind of expressive, skill-based combat that became the hallmark of the hack-and-slash genre. Ninja Gaiden, God of War, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, Nier Automata, Stellar Blade, they all trace their roots back to this one accidental masterpiece. Number 2. Grand Theft Auto 3, PS2. The idea of dropping players into a massive city and saying, "Do whatever you want," sounds obvious now. In 2001, it was absolutely mind-blowing. An entire urban playground where every car could be stolen, every NPC could be interacted with, and the rules were whatever players decided they were. It wasn't the most polished. Vice City and San Andreas would improve on it in almost every way, but it was the one that proved the concept and defined the open-world sandbox genre overnight. Red Dead Redemption, Saints Row, Sleeping Dogs, Watch Dogs, Cyberpunk 2077, and of course every GTA that followed, all of them exist because this game showed the world what was possible.
Number 1. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, PC and Xbox.
And taking the top spot, the game that defined the Western open-world RPG as it exists today. A massive alien world filled with deep lore, intricate fantasy elements, weird but unforgettable characters, and an almost overwhelming amount of content. In 2002, nothing else came close to this level of ambition. Skyrim gets the mainstream love, The Witcher 3 gets the critical praise.
Fallout, Dragon's Dogma, Kingdom Come Deliverance, they all have massive fan bases.
But none of them would exist in their current form without this game laying the foundation. It may not have aged as gracefully as some of the titles it inspired, but any hardcore fan of open-world RPGs owes it to themselves to experience where it all began. From a plumber jumping over barrels to entire worlds built for players to get lost in, these 10 games didn't just entertain, they reshaped the entire industry and created the genres millions of players enjoy today. Which genre-defining game had the biggest impact? Drop it in the comments. Esports Decoded wants to hear the picks. And if this breakdown hit different, smash that like button, subscribe to Esports Decoded, and stay locked in for the next one.